welcome back, everyone, for the Balanced Relationships podcast. I am your co host, Jasmine Bailey, and Shawte is with me as well. We actually have a couple more people. So, Shawte, you say hey to the people.
Hey, good people. Hope you're doing awesome today. Welcome to our podcast.
Excellent. So, I am going to open up this conversation. We're actually going to do a part one and part two. And we have brought some friends, some great friends, some best friends, some sister friends on today with us. And we are getting ready to have a conversation that I think you will appreciate. I'm going to start off with the quote that we have from the book Big Friendship: How We Keep Each Other Close. A close friendship is one of the most influential and important relationships a human life can contain. Anyone will tell you that. But most people don't talk about what it really takes to stay friends for the long haul. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, welcome our guest, and I am going to welcome Alexis, Lanisha, Chakia, and Vanessa, also known as Nessa, to the podcast. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you for having
Thank you for having
us.
us.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to get started in this conversation. Shante, you have some great questions that we're going to talk about because a lot of times, for the most part, people don't look at friendships in an intentional way. And by that, I mean how to develop friendships for the long haul. You have people that you work with, you have people that you go to church with, you have people that you grew up with, and it's nothing wrong about that. But there are certain times that we have to look at, like, who do we actually want in our lives? And are these the type of friendships that I want to have? And what does it look like to curate or to create the friendships that I have? And then the friendships that we do have, how do we make those friendships last over time? And are they supposed to be lifetime friendships? So these are some of the conversations or discussions that we'll be going into today.
Well, awesome. And we have brought on some of our best friends. So as we start, I'm not going to hold you up. The first question that I have for us, and anyone can chime in, it's a panel. We just want to hear from everyone. What do you take into consideration when developing friendships?
What do you take in consideration?
Anyone?
I think friendship kind of meshes with not without being forced. You develop that relationship automatically, sometimes off the rip when you meet someone. The smile, the presentation, and hi, how are you doing? The warmth, the trust, and the respect, I think develops a wonderful relationship.
Okay.
I like that. Chiquia, looks like you were going to say something too.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. What first comes to mind is I think Alexis kind of gave an example of what attracts us to each other. And I think that that's something that happens pretty naturally, as she mentioned. And I think like-minded people, or when you have something in common, you tend to gravitate towards that person. So I think those are probably some of the initial things that causes us to be friends, or to at least cause us to be attracted to each other. And as time goes on, depending on the setting and the situation, if it's in school and you're happy to see this person more often, just time kind of causes you to be friends, right? But the intentionality, and I think that's where the actual effort comes in. And for me, what encourages me to cultivate a friendship is what I look at friends. I think the best way to answer that is, like, I look at friendships as a pizza pie.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think of all of the ingredients, or different ingredients, that you have on a pizza, or the slices within that pizza. Now, your pizza doesn't have to have 8 slices or 4 slices or so, but nevertheless, the concept is there's a variety of ingredients and there's a variety of slices, but yet it still makes up the entire pizza, right? And I think of, who do I have in my circle? Who do I call friends that may bring different elements to me, I may have a friend who is more emotionally intelligent and who's aware of how I feel and they feel and how we feel towards each other. But then I may have just a goofball friend who isn't aware of anything, but just knows how to make everyone laugh, and that's okay as well. So I guess my answer to that is, what do I think about when I'm cultivating friendships is what's the diversity within my own circle, and how are they all feeding me and making me my complete pizza?
Nice. Nice.
I
Lanisha?
actually want to piggyback off of that if
Okay.
I can. So I am going to say the same thing she's saying, just in different words.
Love
So
it.
for me, it would be my husband has this phrase that you gotta want to be with me. So that's
Okay.
that's the first thing. You gotta want to be with me. You have to want to be around me. In that I have to feel seen. So all of my friends, as she said before, they're all different parts of my pizza. So some people, they are drawn more into my intelligence side, some to my fun side, some just more educational. It can be any part of the pizza, but the ultimate is that you have to want to be with me. I can't have to fight to be in that relationship, but I also just feel like I'm being seen as me because I have so many different layers. So I got so many different pieces of this pizza of myself, and I'm adding
Yes.
you to that pizza as well.
I love
I
it.
love
I love
that.
it. Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
That reminds me of a conversation I had with Shakia a while back about all of the different friends bringing out parts of you, and all of it is still you. So even though
Yes.
you might be goofy with one person and really mature and just well put together with someone else, and really spiritual with someone else, like all of it is still a part of you. So it's not that you're showing up inauthentic in one friendship, no, but certain friendships can bring out different parts of you, and that's awesome too.
I love it. Lanisha.
Yeah, I was just trying to relate to it. I will say my thought is a little different when I think
Please share.
when I think of what do I take in consideration when trying to develop a friendship or deciding whether or not there should be a friendship. I'll be honest, I think a lot about whether or not it's a safe space
Definitely.
and whether or not there are boundaries that either I have or they have that might prevent us from being a true and authentic friendship. So a lot of my friendships in the last few years come from coworkers and come from, working on the job or different work situations. And in those environments, I want to make sure that it makes sense from the standpoint of the productivity of my job and my career and my ambitions, and that it also makes sense from what I've learned in the past and my past experiences. And we all know that there are some things that you would hope that you can share with them, and they don't cross certain lines. But at the same time, friendship and work doesn't always mix. So that has to be, for me, taken into consideration. So those are things that I take into consideration, whether or not that would be a safe space and whether or not it's a boundary I shouldn't cross, for example, like an employer-employee relationship. And I think that those can be great spaces for great connections and to, really get to know one another. But at least for me, I know I've enforced a boundary there that if I'm someone's manager or my own manager, we can't be friends while we have that essentially two separate set of roles. So those are two things that I take into consideration.
Right.
I really love that you brought that up, Lanisha, because it's so important that we feel seen, that we feel like it's a safe space to actually speak and share, and that we feel confident in knowing that what we're sharing is remaining with who we're sharing it with, and we're not feeling judged, right? I think all of those things make a difference, and then our boundaries are respected.
Right.
So I really love that you brought those points in because it's so important.
I think that's the key word, is the boundary. Some people do not understand the meaning of boundary, and they will take and suck you dry if you let them. And so you have to have that person that will give you enough respect to put out your boundaries and respect those boundaries. And without that, you cannot have a great and valuable friendship.
Right.
Yes.
And then it goes back to ourselves where we have to be seen enough, safe enough to,
Yes.
well, to enforce those boundaries or to set the boundaries because we are the ones that set the boundaries. And then, however we do or do not, that's how people
Mhm.
will ultimately treat us. So I love that. Thank you so much for saying that, Alexis. Shantae, you want to?
Nice. So how do we or you navigate difficult conversations with your friends?
I think that still comes from your boundary and your level of respect for one another. Friends, you should be able to have that difficult conversation because you do have a relationship. It's a relationship.
It is a relationship.
And so you should be able to have that conversation. Now, how you go to that person and have that conversation, that is where you come in. My thing is always respect. That's where you come in as the respect part. So if I'm having a situation and there's difficulty to understand your point of view, I have to be big girl enough to put on the big girl panties and say, understanding this, I feel this type of way, and explain all of that to let them give you that rebuttal, so that way you know where that person's coming from. And that's every relationship: your husband, your children, your co-workers, your moms, and everybody. You just have to be able to speak. I tell my husband this all the time: it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Sure.
So that will help. That will go 100 miles.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and that definitely was going to be the first thing that comes to mind. It's how you say it and how you approach it. I think it's important to navigate those conversations by being intentional about your truth and what you need to say and the point you want to get across. But at the same time, when they're your friend, I feel like you know to have a little more grace with it. You know them well to know in a way, hey, this is a better way of approaching it with them than a stranger, which you just I don't think have as much consideration or as much insight into what would be well received.
That's good.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I think if I could just kind of expand even more on this pizza pie of friendship, right? And how we have different folks in our lives. I think it's also important to note how we see ourselves and how we are able to express ourselves and how we believe our friends are expressing themselves. And I think more specifically, I'm looking at emotionally intelligent. Do I understand myself? Do I understand how others see me? And how can I navigate that? And if I understand that as a basis and know how my friend also understands or navigates themselves, then I think the way that I handle conflict will depend on how that person and I handle things. So, for example, if I may be emotionally intelligent to know that this person is someone who doesn't really take well to criticism, that doesn't mean that I won't say something that's critical, but how they may receive it, maybe they are a visual person, and so maybe I might give either a visual illustration, or maybe I might draw something, or I might write it out for that person, as opposed to just being more auditory with that person. So I think that I will try to take into consideration what do I know about my friend, and how can I navigate that? How can I approach this conflict with them that's going to be the best solution? I think it's also important for me to say that because I understand interpersonal communication, at least I think I do.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
I am also okay with knowing that I may not be able to resolve a conflict with every person, even those that are my friends. There might just be a difference of opinion, a difference of view, and that conflict will be there. And that conflict doesn't mean that it needs to be frictional and it needs to now have a discourse throughout our friendship. It just means this is an area that may have a bit of disagreement, and it's okay that we think differently, feel differently about it. But because you're my friend, I think Lanisha mentioned giving grace to the friend, right? I think, but because you're my friend, I may, extend that grace, and I'd like for that grace to be extended with me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to, we may solve every single conflict, every single problem that we have within that friendship.
That makes sense.
Nice, nice.
Vanessa, were you going to say something? Oh, go ahead.
No, Nessa?
No, I just happy that I get to piggyback off of her because she says everything that I want to say. And I was gonna say it honestly, when I bring up different topics that might be uncomfortable, it just depends on the type of friendship or how we interact, because it might be like she said, we might have that conversation, but it might not be a conversation. I might navigate the situation more creative because I know that person might be more sensitive. Like I feel like I'm one of the sensitive friends, so when my friends come to me, they be like, well, I want to talk to you about something that's uncomfortable. But what has really helped me, honestly, is the health relationship groups. It was a group, or how do I say it, Jasmine?
Yep, healthy relationship skills. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so skill. So it's like a skill building, I'm gonna say, class that you can take. And it has helped me because I'll say things. I do it more with my husband. And I always tell him he's my best friend. Even though he's my husband, technically he's my best friend. So I'd be like, can I read your mind for a moment? This is what I'm thinking. You tell me if it's true. Oftentimes we just don't have the language to have the conversation. And so that class has given me the language to have those conversations. But it ultimately depends on the person that I'm talking to. Because I won't say have the same conversation with my husband that I might have with Lanisha or Jasmine, but we might talk about the topic. It might not just be the same way.
I love it.
Yes, it's really good, really good, really good. I'm just going to add just a tiny bit because all of you said so many good stuff. I like to kind of like prelude a difficult conversation and kind of set the tone. I like to kind of help the person to know the good stuff first and what I really, really appreciate. But then from there, I will let them know that, hey, I have to have a hard conversation right now. However, it doesn't change XYZ. I just need you to understand this perspective, and I still want to hear how you feel about it, and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of take that approach. And I like afterwards to be able to point out, because some people run away from conflict. So I like to remind us later that all of these difficult stuff that we've gone through has helped us to become stronger, and it's helped our bond to be that much more. So I think that's so important to remember in friendship, because as I have my kids now, 19 and 16, right, as I teach them about friendship, I know that sometimes we don't want to have hard conversations because we don't want to lose our friends, right? But I'm teaching them that it's important to still communicate, and communicate with empathy so you can grow.
I love it. I love it. The last thing that I will enter into this conversation, you have all mentioned something. I love how, Chakia, you said that it just depends, and Vanessa, you segued into it. One of the skills that I learned, climbing the ladder of integrity, what that means is that it's me, before I get into the conversation, me really navigating how I feel. So it's not a conflict resolution skill. It's, okay, how am I going to show up? So me understanding how I'm feeling, what needs, like my values I feel like that may have been compromised, or how do I want to approach the conversation? So I'm talking before we get into the conversation now. I now know, like Vanessa said, with that skill, it's helped me. Sometimes I may not have the conversation in that time frame because I just have to deal with myself first. But the other part of it is, depending on the friendship, like you both have said, Lanisha, well, it was Chakia and Vanessa, I may not have to say it the way that I initially had it in my head. So that for me has been a big change, because it's just like, how people are like, look, I just got to be me. I just got to say it. Sometimes that part of it is not emotionally mature. It's like, yeah, I can say what I need to say, but just holding the space. And you said, Lanisha, grace, how would I want to hear this? Because I'm wrong a lot of times, but even being wrong, how do I want to hear it? So it helps me to look at it from different angles. And I appreciate you saying that, Vanessa, too. And I know we'll key up to the next question. I think a lot of it for me now is understanding I just may not have the skill. I need to talk about it with somebody or talk it through with somebody. And even I say the skill climb the ladder of integrity, because what it really is for me or the person that needs to get clear to have that conversation internally or with somebody else who's a non-objective party before we even go into the conversation. So that's what I would,
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Yeah.
So when we come to friendships now, then how are bonds really formed and preserved in friendships? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm gonna go first, but then I'll probably come back after our partner goes.
Get your girl, get your girl.
Because the first thing that comes to mind, and I think what all of us, Jasmine, Lanisha, and myself do is be intentional. Like, we are very intentional. And I would say that's like the main thing is being intentional. And that's being intentional of me knowing that I'm going to be late and be like, hey, Jasmine, I'm just gonna be a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
That parenting and doing this, I didn't plan for it. I didn't plan to be a mom and do the interview. In my mind, I was just doing the interview. So
Mama didn't count this time.
yeah, it didn't. But definitely being intentional and in being able to have the space to be intentional, whether I'm right or wrong. My friends know that I'm being intentional and, hey, this is what's going on. How can we navigate? And I usually will say, I need to change this. I want you guys' input. How can we do this?
I love it.
Yeah. Nice.
So Nessa, am I able to like steal your words this time?
Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, I love the being intentional. If I can even do a quick plug in, as a professional speaker and communications professional, my company is actually called CL Intentional.
Let's go.
Which are my initials, but it's because of the basis of I want everything that I say to be intentional. I want to, have meaning and purpose behind the things that I communicate and how I'm communicating with others, and for that matter, as I am facilitating communication within other circles as well. So absolutely, Nessa, we're on it. we're on it together with that. How do I just form bonds? As I think we kind of leaned into that in our initial conversation, the initial question, which was, we are attracted to people that have things that are alike, right? Commonalities tend to bring us together. I like to be a little more flowy with it, if you will. And I'm sure that's not a word, but I'll use it in this sense. I like to be a little more flowy with it and just see how that friendship grows. And again, allow that person to be whatever ingredient that they're going to be in my pizza. I'm just going to allow them to do that. And how do I preserve the friendship? Based on how they show up, based on how I accept their showing up, I will, navigate that and preserve it as it is. So if I have a friend who is more, numbers oriented and timely, and I'll attempt to, hey, let's put something on the calendar. Let's do this, let's plan something for this day. If I have a friend who is okay with spontaneity, I may just, send out a text and be like, hey, what you doing right now? Let's see if we can pop up together and maybe do something, grab lunch, or just have a phone call, right? And so I preserve the friendships based on, again, the needs that each of my friends have, but also hopefully the needs that it serves my needs as well. So it's still it's selfish, but it's also selfless. It's a bit of an interchange of both. So I hope that answered the question. Like, how do they bond? How do I establish those bonds? The bonds just kind of happened, and if they fit and they feel right, then I will then make efforts intentionally to preserve them, to save them, and work on them based on what the friend needs and based on how I also need it. And I don't know if here is a great way to mention the 5 love languages. And I'd imagine that we all are pretty familiar with the 5 love languages and understanding how we each receive love and how others may also give love, right? How we receive and give love. And I think that plays part in how we preserve the friendship.
Yes.
That's
speak
good.
your friend's language, and then
Yeah.
hopefully your friend speaks your language as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
So, and there's so many other ways that we can go into this, but I want to give
Yeah.
space to the other
Yeah.
folks on the panel. But I think that's the basic answer is I want to know how you love, and I want to know how you give love, how you receive love, and then likewise, I want you to know how I give love, how I receive love, and then that is what's going to help the preservation of the friendship.
That's
Mhm.
good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Right.
Thank you for
Yes.
bringing that resource to the conversation too. For anyone who doesn't know about it, Gary Chapman's 5 Love Languages, you can just Google it. We may even put it in the show notes, but
We
it's
will.
a great,
Mhm.
yes, so it's a great way to know how you like to give and receive love, and then for your friends, family, and anyone else. So thank you for saying that, the 5 love
Good
languages.
stuff.
Yeah, that was
Good
good.
stuff.
Yes.
You know, as we're talking about how friendships, how it's bonded and then preserved, I think about God has blessed me with some really good friendships. And as I think about them and I think back to the years that we've become and what we have grown into, I think about friendships are formed in small increments, right? And I teach my clients that trust is formed in small increments, but then I'm kind of meshing them together because in friendship, we trust in these small increments to where now we can feel seen, we can be our authentic selves, we can know that we're not being judged, we can have the empathy, we can feel like we are here, right? And then we can see that people are pouring into us and we're getting to pour into others. So I think it's as we look back, because some of the people that we never even thought when we first met them, that this person is one of my best friends now. But now you look back and see all of the ways that they were with you through some of your most trying times and how they checked on you and how they might have come to be able to help you in some type of way. You know, you see all of these small increments to now be like, whoa, this person is really my person, right? So I think that is important for us to note.
I love it. I love it. Did anybody else want to share anything from that question?
You got everyone touched on everything, and where she said the time and it builds. Friendship doesn't happen overnight. So
All
in
right.
that knowing somebody and get to know them, sometimes that cultivation and that bonding takes years and it takes months and it takes things happening, good things, bad things, and you going to that person. Now there are certain people for certain things. That pizza, you know, I have my olive and then I have my cheese and then I got the one that brings the sauce. So you go to certain people for certain things and you build that pizza to make it that one mesh. So, and then over time, you start to develop different tastes and you be like, oh my gosh, well, I think I do like this on my pizza. You know?
Yes.
You know, your analogy, Shakia, is hitting.
It's the one. It's the one. Yes.
But, you
So
know, so
yes.
it does take time. So when she was mentioning it, I was like, yep, that's in my mind. It's time, you know, we cultivate it through time.
And you know what? I want to thank everybody for your time today because we are going to end this segment of Big Friendship, How We Keep Each Other Close. I'm actually reading from the book and we will leave that in the description. But we are going to have a part 2 to this conversation because this conversation is very pizza filled.
Love it.
We have a good pizza sauce going on here. So stay tuned for part 2 as we go back for balanced relationships. Stay balanced, everybody.